Unique people leading unique lives shape and inform Iowa City. This community is enhanced by these women and men who live in our midst, working, teaching, creating. Welcome to a series of conversations with people who have stories to tell. Join my special guests and me, Ellen Buchanan, in a series of interviews called One of a Kind. Ellie Simmons is an accomplished and dedicated artist. Painting and drawing is her life's work. She's been painting since she was very young. She grew up in Iowa City, attended university schools, graduated in fine arts from the University of Iowa in 1947, and did graduate study at the Philadelphia Print Club, Cornell University, and Iowa. She has enriched our community in many ways. Many of you remember the mural that was painted by her in the library story room of the old Carnegie building. The mural's fanciful, surprising, and imaginative figures added an extra delight for a whole generation of children. Besides the library, Ellie contributes her artistic talent to various organizations. She was part of the group that helped establish the University of Iowa Museum of Art during the late 60s. She's published more than 20 books and illustrated several others. Her artwork hangs in various public places and in private collections here and abroad. She's had her work shown in many galleries and centers like the Philadelphia Print Club, the White Art Museum in Ithaca, New York, the Des Moines Art Center, Pillsbury Incorporated in Minneapolis, University Theaters on the U of I campus, to name only a few. Her distinctive style is one of meticulous detail. Her work is imaginative, playful at times, intricate, and often tells a story. She and her husband, John, raised 2 children in Iowa City, Fred and Mary. Welcome to One of a Kind, Ellie. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Ellen.
Your story, I know, begins in Des Moines, where you were born in 1925. Tell me a little bit about your parents and what brought you to Iowa City.
Well, my parents were both newspaper people, and my father came here in 1927 as director of publications and publisher of the Daily Iowan. And in Des Moines, they had, well, my father was editor of the Des Moines Capital, which preceded the Des Moines Register and Tribune. Mm-hmm. And he hired my mother as a reporter, sob sister, and they were married. All 3 of us girls were born in Des Moines and then came to Iowa City.
And so your mother, I know, besides having 3 little girls and raising them, she had a career in herself, didn't she?
Yes, she was always a writer of feature stories, poetry, a good poet, and did publicity for various organizations, including vaudeville when she was quite young.
Tell me, did you always want to paint?
Yes.
When did it start? What happened?
Well, when I was first given something to play with that made pictures. I think I got probably my first crayons around 3, first paints around 5, and it was just very satisfying, frustrating. I feel I'm just now beginning to be able to paint as I would like to have as a small child.
Did your mother and father encourage this?
Well, they did not discourage it. No, they put up with it gladly, I think.
So you went all through university schools. You went to the University of Iowa and got a degree in, what, 47 in fine arts?
47, fine arts.
And
yeah.
you studied with 2 very well-known painters, Lachey.
Philip Guston and James Lachey.
What did you get from them?
Oh, lots. Everything that well, not everything that I know about painting now, because I've learned a lot on my own, but I never had painted in oils before I met those guys. And that's how I learned to do it.
And you told me before the interview that Alfred Wilkie was here around that time?
He was a graduate student. And I started out as a freshman in freshman drawing, as everybody did in those days. And my freshman drawing teacher, Mary Holmes, kind of booted me upstairs to this wonderful graduate class in painting, for which I was completely unprepared. But Ulfred was in that same class, and he was already a name painter, but I think came back to learn a little more, get another degree, and so he was a nice classmate.
Fertile soil here at Iowa, wasn't it, for the arts?
Yes, still is.
Tell me, you had some wonderful experiences in college. You were off to New York to work for Mademoiselle magazine. What was that about?
Well, they used to have a program called the Guest Editors, and they went to, well, this competition was on every campus in the country. And in every year for the month of June, they would choose, I think, 12 ladies to run the magazine for a month, to put out the magazine. And I was the first freshman that they ever chose, and it was not an unmitigated success.
You weren't?
Oh, I had a wonderful time, but I wanted to write like the New Yorker, and they had chosen a freshman from Iowa to be just the opposite. So,
something rather earthy.
No, I had a wonderful time, but there was a little rewriting of my copy.
And then in the summers, I know you got a job on, was it the Ladies' Home Journal?
Yes.
Was that in Des Moines?
No, in Philadelphia.
Oh, in Philadelphia.
The editorial offices were in Philadelphia, and the editors were from Iowa, and they were Bruce and Beatrice Gould.
There's a story of how you got the job. Tell me about it. With Mrs. Gould.
A little nepotism, perhaps, or I'm not sure that's the word, but my father gave Beatrice Gould her first job in journalism, and Beatrice Gould and Bruce Gould became editors of the Ladies' Home Journal, and they had me to tea when I was at Mademoiselle, and they had a suite at the Plaza, very elegant, and I remember sounding off about how everybody in the city wore hats to everything, not just to work, but everything, and realized that Beatrice Gould was wearing a hat and gloves in her own apartment. But she was tolerant of me.
And she hired you?
Yes,
she hired you.
Yes, she did.
Was this about the same time that you met your husband, John Simmons?
I met him the spring before the summer that I went to the Journal for the first time.
Is there a story in how you met John?
We met at a tea dance. He came back after the war, which was fortunate because when he started the university, I was in the 5th grade, and I don't think he would have paid me much mind at that point.
So he was the older man that
At that point,
came back.
Very old. Yeah.
No, not that old. So it was exciting business. You got married, and you were, after a while, you were off to Philadelphia.
Right.
And is this when you started thinking about children's books, or when did that come?
That happened when I had my children.
And when was that? Was that in Ithaca?
No, in Philadelphia. They were both born in Philadelphia. And I quit my job at the Journal and freelanced after that, which was fun. And then, as they got older and more interesting, I started writing about them, and seemed reasonable.
Well, I loved the 2 books with Mary in the title.
Yeah.
Mary, the Mouse Champion, and Mary changes her clothes.
Right.
I think those they're so humorous and so right on, and I recommend those to anybody who has children in early grade school.
Thank you very much.
And I saw that one of them was dedicated to your son.
Yes, because it wasn't about him, so I had to kind of well, he's in it.
He's in that, yes,
he's
and
in
so
it.
is your husband, John.
That's right.
Who's the father, who's telling Mary to take the mouse outside. Oh, they're wonderful,
Well,
wonderful.
that really was based on my own childhood, but it was not hard to
to
transfer the characters.
And then you wrote this wonderful series, or not wrote, you drew, the wonderful series with no words, dog, cat, family.
And
Were they
wheels.
Wheels. Were these scratchboard or pen and ink?
I think they were scratchboard, as I recall. The effect is somewhat the same. It's black and white.
And they're such a wonderful size. They're small, and you can,
Well-
you know, little children can carry them around.
We discovered with our own kids that Fred's favorite book when he was just a toddler was Robert's Rules of Order, because it was small, and he'd turn the pages very seriously. But it was the size, of course, that appealed to him.
And there's
So-
a wonderful, wonderful picture in dog. And I love underneath it says Lowe, who's a local veterinarian who's retired in Iowa City. But there's a lot of little Iowa City touches if you have the patience to look.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, Dr. Lowe is very much a part of that book.
You do love animals, don't you? And
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
tell from your work, not only in children, but in your painting. And I want to talk about, all the while you were doing your children's books, you were doing your oils.
Yeah.
Did you work in your home, or did you have a studio out of your home?
Always at home.
Always.
Still.
So let's talk a little bit about your paintings. I read an article that your husband mentioned once when asked to describe your paintings. He said that they were magical expressionism. Do you?
Yeah, that's pretty good, I think.
So what?
'Cause I don't know what I would call my style, but that's close enough.
You have a lot of animals and a lot of things you put in and juxtapose, and you don't like people asking you, tell me what that means. Tell me why.
That I don't
Yeah,
like
you
to
don't
say
like
what it
if I
is.
say, tell me what this one means.
I think that a painting or a book or whatever should belong to the viewer or the reader or whatever. I mean, it's his, and I'd rather not have any verbal input. I've said all I can say on the canvas, and I'm surprised sometimes at what people do think it means, but that's their right, certainly.
And you where there are lots of animals, some mythical, and there's myth in some of your paintings.
Some literary allusions sometimes.
And do you feel your paintings often do tell a story?
Not precisely that. I think there is a lot happening. And it's kind of free association really on my part, so it could be on your part too, as you look through. There are sometimes puns that people seldom notice, but I know they're there, and sometimes people find them.
Well, you have that wonderful show right now, currently running at University Theaters, and I had the privilege of walking through, and there's that wonderful large oil that you have with lots of religious symbols and religious persons
Well,
in
it's
it.
the Pope,
Pope,
Pope
well, I
John
know,
the 23rd.
But there isn't just the Pope. There's Gandhi and
Eleanor Roosevelt.
See, I missed Eleanor.
Well, she's there, and Pope's parents are there, and my family's there. I'm there. Emerson, a wonderful lady who ran for city council in Iowa City years ago, and I can't think of her name. She always wore purple and carried a lily or a flower of some kind. And I always thought she was so wonderful. Muriel Ganka, I think was her name.
The woman
she's
in the
there.
purple dress.
Right, and she ran for council on kind of a mystical ticket and talked about angels on Old Capitol, and it was different. Yeah.
Probably pretty good for this town to have a little
I
mystical
thought it was,
things.
yeah, point of pride.
Some people say when they look at your work that they can almost smell the flower that's on somebody's dress, and that they can almost taste the wine that's spilled, and I think that's
I think that's
lovely
very
compliment.
nice. Yeah.
So, how long does it take you to do one of these paintings?
Well, the one of Pope John the 23rd was 10 years.
10
so
years?
It does take
So you
quite a long
start
time.
and then you put it aside, and do you start something else, or are you continually?
Well, I have to put things aside when they get too wet to proceed with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would get smeary and weird.
So 10 is the longest. What is an average length of some of the
2 or
paintings that you
3,
brought in for this, so the viewers could see?
2 or 3, I would say.
2 or 3 years?
The chair one was maybe 5,
Mm-hmm.
I think. It's hard to remember looking back. But it does take a long time, and there's no rush that I can think of.
And for people who don't know, your studio, like you said, has always been in your home, and you have a studio on the second floor now of your house, and it's wonderful. Could you just describe a little bit of it for people who don't have the privilege to see it?
Well, I think of it as kind of a light box. It's a long, smallish room with a bank of windows on the north side and some auxiliary lamps and such. It's just a wonderful space, and light is its big plus.
You feel like, with the trees, I felt that you're kind of in a tree house.
Well, that's right, and kind of as if you were on a boat, too, because the windows just are all the way.
And you spend hours.
Hours.
Tell a viewer how long you spend usually per day. I mean, this is discipline.
Well, it is. I mean, it's where I want to be.
Sure.
I don't take credit for discipline at all.
I think you are, but...
But ideally, it would be 7 hours, 4 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, because the morning is much my liveliest time. And afternoon, I can kind of maybe round out whatever I got into in the morning.
Did someone suggest this to you along the way, or just something you've just done because you love it so much?
Yeah. And my time is so much my own now, because the kids are grown.
And didn't some little school child ask you what one of the best things about your work is, and you said it was being able to do this in your home?
Yes, exactly. And also working at home, you can do it whenever you have some time, and you don't have to change your clothes or look for transportation. You just
go up to your second floor studio. Is there a question, Ellie, that you're asked quite frequently about your work, or is it a question? Do people look at your work and say, is there a recurring question about, or is it maybe what is?
I can't think of a recurring question except sort of how do you do that and why, and sort of mystification, I guess.
Because it's so.
There's
so
a lot
intricate,
of
and
little
so detailed.
stuff in it, and all I can say is that that's what I see, what I think.
You must have wonderful eyes, because
They were.
but your detail is so miraculous.
Well, it interests me that when I could see detail the best, I didn't use very much. Now that it's a little difficult, I use more and more. But there must be something about life that brings out the detail at the end and not at the beginning. I don't know.
Now, you had the privilege of not only growing up in Iowa City and then moving to Philadelphia and living there and painting, and then Ithaca, because your husband was with Cornell University Press, and then you came to Chicago. You kept moving westward. What brought you back to Iowa City in the early 60s?
Lust for Iowa City.
Lust for Iowa City, oh.
Well, of course, John's job brought us here. We never dreamt that there would be one in Iowa City. And this is our favorite place of all the world. always was, though we had a marvelous time in the East, and I wouldn't have missed that. But you read in the newspapers that so many young people leave Iowa, and I think leaving Iowa is fine, but coming back is even better.
Well, tell me, your children were born, you said, in Philadelphia, and you, where are they now? Where are
Mary's in Boston, and she's at the Harvard Square Art Center, framing pictures and cutting mats and doing all the things I wish she were doing right here.
You could use her, yes.
And Fred is in Iowa City and works at the University Hospital.
Well, looking back in the chapters of your life, who made a difference in your life? Who influenced you, Ellie?
I think family more than anything. Parents, husband, children, pets now.
Oh yes, do tell
Well,
us.
they're inspirational, of course. No, but my folks were wonderfully creative, funny, nice people with fascinating friends. And
Fun to grow up in that family, wasn't it?
yes, it was wonderful.
You had kind of historical home, didn't you, in Iowa City?
Yes,
Somebody
It
said
was
that, was it a stop for
It's supposed to
Underground
have
Railroad?
been. I can't say that with authority.
Where was your your parents' home?
It's still there on
Where is
North
it?
Dubuque Street, past the Mayflower and those new apartments. When we were kids, there were still tunnels under the house that were causing the house to fall in, so they were filled up. But that was supposed to have been where slaves were hidden on their way to freedom. And there was a big cave in the backyard. There are all kinds of legends about buried treasure and stuff, but I'm sure it was for vegetables and wine and stuff like that, because the house had been an inn on the stagecoach route. And so there were practical reasons for a lot of these romantic things. But it was a wonderful place to grow up.
And your mother must have been, well, she was quite ahead of her time to be a career woman back in those
She
days.
didn't have much choice.
She didn't have much choice.
No, her father died when she was, when she was in college, and she had to earn a living. So she went to St. Paul and got a job on the Pioneer Press, I think, when she was 18, when she must have been wonderful.
Isn't that something?
And a good writer. So, and I can't really tell you how she got to Des Moines. Better job, I suppose.
And then did you write for the Gazette when she lived in Iowa City?
Yes.
Did she write a lovelorn column?
She did. How did you? Well,
I've been doing some research on
well,
it.
I guess you have. Yeah, she wrote a column called Mary Manners. And there's another Mary Manners now.
That's right.
But hers was strictly advice to the lovelorn. And when I was in college, people were always telling me that they knew who Mary Manners was. It was supposed to be a doctor in Cedar Rapids.
And it was your
my
mother?
mom.
Aw, you lucky you, Ellie.
Well, it was fun.
Oh, and now you have a sister who lives here?
Yes. And she lives in the house on North Dubuque Street. And she also works at the hospital.
Is she also a person who is in love with art?
Oh, I think so. I think so. She's very talented too, but she doesn't have the time that I have to.
Because she's working at the
do it,
hospital. You're privileged, I know, every year to go north to a very special place in Wisconsin.
That's right.
Do you have a studio in your summer place? Or is this a place to work?
I do have, yes, I do work
Contemplate.
all summer long. The light is terrible, but the vibes are perfect. And
Where is this place you go to?
it's about 20 miles south of the south shore of Lake Superior. Near the market town is Hayward. And it's just a little cabin in the woods. Very peaceful, very pretty spot.
So what are you working on right now? What painting are you working on now?
Well, I'm working on a little still life that I started at the lake last summer. of all white things, which is kind of a challenge.
All white things?
All white, yes.
Like a seagull or whatever. Who knows?
Well, I'm trying
I'll
to
have
think.
to wait.
Well, there's a skull in it.
There's a skull.
A skull of a baby loon and some white plant life and a white cat and just white stuff.
And then I did see a wonderful painting, quite large, in your studio that you are working on.
Sort of a self-portrait as a child.
It's wonderful.
Well, that,
Are you?
for me, evokes the house on North Dubuque Street, because it had the cliffs going up behind and a green glade to play in, and it was just a wonderful childhood place.
Are you 3/4 through with it, or who knows? You can't ask. Maybe I shouldn't ask an artist that.
Maybe a fifth,
A fifth.
maybe, I don't know.
I forgot to mention when I was talking about your illustration of children's books, you did also illustrate for 2 local writers,
Yes.
Paul Engel and John Gerber. How was that doing, Paul Engel's book on Christmas? And
That has done very well through the years. It's kind of his writings were sort of a classic, I think.
And then you did John Gerber's Trip in the Model T.
Oh, marvelous Model T.
Was
And
that
it
fun to do?
It was lots of fun, except I don't drive a car, and it was kind of beyond my ken, but I studied the Model T carefully, and it was fun to do.
Do people find that quite remarkable that you don't drive, that you've managed to raise
Yeah,
2
I
children?
think they ask about that more than about the paintings.
How did you raise, I have to ask you, 2 children without a car?
Well, I didn't know you had to have a car to have children.
Touche, that's good.
Well, we just did.
And were the buses running when your children?
yeah.
So you've
Yeah.
had bus.
Well, and they went to Lincoln School, which is not far from. They always walked to school, and when Fred couldn't do his paper route, we had to do it on foot. We didn't do it in a car. There are
Sure.
times that you do miss a car.
But your
but
life must be
not
easier
often.
too. I mean,
Sure,
without
sure.
the hassle of a car.
Yeah.
What do you do if you're not painting? What do you like to do to relax? Probably go back up to your studio and paint.
Maybe number 1. No, I love to walk, and I love to go to the theater and to music things. And
Movie? I think you like movies, don't you?
movies, definitely. Parties, people.
You're in the right place for that, aren't you, Ellie?
Right.
Well, I wish you great luck on this, your self-portrait that you're working on, that you said you were
Thank you.
5th done, and it's been absolutely wonderful having you on One of a Kind, and thank you.
Thank you, my dear.
My guest on One of a Kind has been Iowa City artist Ellie Simmons. Ever since receiving her first paint set at an early age, Ellie wanted to paint. Her oils, pen and ink, and scratchboard drawings have been called magical expressionism. Odd juxtapositions appear in her paintings. Objects are identifiable, but the items are juxtaposed on canvas. Her meticulously detailed paintings and drawings have an imaginative style and hold for some a sense of freedom and play. The detail in her work is absolutely remarkable. She takes her vocation very seriously and routinely spends 7 hours a day painting in her second-floor studio. Ellie Simmons has published more than 20 books and has illustrated several others for local writers. Her work has been featured in many art galleries and art centers. She has work in public places and in private collections in the United States and abroad. If you view her paintings, listen to her speak of her life and her life's work, you realize that Ellie Simmons is one of a kind.